Hello everybody, I am Dax, an Islander, and this video is going to be actually in pertinence to myself. I'm going to talk about myself in this video. Don't worry, that there is an actual point to it. You can skip ahead to the last 2-3 minutes of it, which will address the actual point. So if you want to skip a young idiot who thinks he's an old fool talking about shit that everyone should know about, by all means. Last 2-3 minutes, I won't feel offended. Past that, I'm pretty much going to tell you why there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse for not seeing what was coming to this country. No excuse. Now here's why. When I was younger, as I said, if you want to go straight to the end, just go straight to the end. If you want the full, honest point. When I was younger, about a senior in high school, that's when everything was setting in on me. You had the 2008 elections coming up, you had the 2008 bubble burst of the housing market. And when I was younger, I always asked questions. I always thought about things nobody else thought about. I was kind of the odd kid that way. But it was alright, because I wrestled and played football in high school, so no one messed with me. But I always thought about, the menial things, sometimes leading into bigger things. One of the major questions I asked myself throughout high school, and this was before I understood everything, was why didn't the government give everyone $1 million when they left their parents' house? Now, hold on, I've changed my opinion quite a bit. I've learned a lot. But that was one of the main questions I asked when I was in school. Why didn't the government give somebody a whole bunch of money so pretty much to ensure that they had a good life? $1 million, I thought that was a lot of money back then. And then I learned about the economy. Back when I was 18, I had no idea what an economy even was. I mean, I've heard it a dozen times. I've seen it mentioned back when my parents dragged me to watch Fox News and, all the MSM, and I ate that shit up back then as well. But I found startling contradictions to it. They would say one thing and draw an automatic conclusion, and I thought, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? Well, what gave you that idea? Can you prove this to me? I never had those questions answered. So I decided, once the internet, good faithful internet, popped up, I'd check and see for myself. Now, what the conclusions I've come to, well, lack thereof for a lot of it, would label me a conspiracy theorist. 9/11, I'm not entirely convinced it was made by or concocted by a guy over in Afghanistan, part of a religious cult nutjob organization that hijacked 4 planes. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. Not entirely. I'm not saying that the government did it, but all of that happened. No government fighters came and took him out. Sorry, it doesn't sit right with me. And the fact that the MSM pretty much had everything they needed to know within an hour, I'm sorry, it just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe I asked too much questions, I don't know. But ever since I actually opened my eyes to one crucial thing, one crucial, absolute factor in my life. Why do things work the way they work? This is a question that I think everyone and anyone should ask themselves. When they're children, when they're adults, when they're teenagers, why do things work the way that they work? That was one of the biggest questions that plagued my mind ever since I was young. Why are there different countries? Why are there borders? Why are there religions? So on and so on and so on. Why does money buy things? Why don't we use gold? Why don't we use silver? Why don't we barter? Why is it illegal to do this? Why is it illegal to do that? Why can politicians do this? Why can't we do that? What is insider trading? What was economic collapse? What was inflation? What was hyperinflation? All these questions I thought about when I was a senior in high school. What got me to thinking about it was the fact that my parents were very politically vocal, if you could say. And now, this might be a little bit of an embarrassment for me and, kind of a laugh for everyone out there, but the reason I got into politics, and I thought politics was important, Well, it wasn't what I thought was important. I just wanted to sound sophisticated, to have intellectual conversations. And what was the standard intelligent uh, convulgence or conversion? The thing that people who seem to think they're sophisticated talk about: politics. So I thought, I want to sound sophisticated, and I do like to see what makes the world go round. So politics it was. I soon came to find the whole left-right paradigm. The left basically wants higher taxes, more social freedoms, peace and all that great stuff. The right wants lower taxes, quote-unquote, less government spending, a higher military-industrial complex, or a stronger military presence, all those stereotypical asinine details that pretty much trying to define our society. To those who don't like smoking, I'm afraid I do it. Sorry to say. Why? Because I know I'm not going to get that one comment. The cigarette turned me off. Well, sorry to turn you off. Now, I was an idiot back then. I was 17, I supported John McCain against Obama. Why? Because John McCain was a Republican, and I thought Republicans were the right side and Democrats were the wrong side. Yeah, I've progressed quite a long way since then. At any rate, so after John McCain lost, I can't remember for the life of me why I was supporting him instead of Ron Paul. Well, I didn't know who Ron Paul was back then. Anyway, so after Obama won the presidency, I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe he's different from all other politicians. I've been thinking about it for some time. I've learned about well, I knew there was corruption, but I've actually learned it. I found out what lobbyists were. I found out what backroom deals were. I found out that there is legal bribing, so on and so forth. And I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe since Obama's black, everyone will cut him some slack. Yeah, I thought that. I thought, maybe he will be different. Maybe he will make things a little better and give us, more freedoms. How wrong was I? Turned out to be just like every other crook in Washington. So, after that happened, I decided to get more hot and heavy into it. Start asking more questions, figure out more of what everything was. Why was the dollar so powerful and so influential? And then I found out that, in comparison, other countries around the world pay a lot more for, in ratio, a gallon of gas than America does. And I asked, why? And I found out about the petrodollar. And that's when I finally understood the concept of money has nothing to offer. It is people's confidence in currency that makes it valuable. Their desire to have it. If they're confident in it, they'll want to have it. I found out that other countries had to buy dollars in order to buy oil. I found this an intriguing notion, because that cuts out our middleman. Since we are the middleman, that cuts us out, so we don't have to pay as much, because the companies didn't have to pay as much to get oil over there, to the gas stations, to the consumers. So I found out what the petrodollar was. I found out that the dollar was also the world reserve currency, and I thought I was such hot shit. I thought, yeah, I know it all. Yeah. I'm gonna find out I didn't know anything. Hell, as much as I like to think I have all the answers, I don't. I don't know shit. So, anyway, back to what I was talking about. I started to question, why were we in Iraq? As everyone knows, the Twin Towers fell 9/11/2001. I was about 9 years old at the time. They were telling me about the sand people boogeyman over in the Middle East and how we had to go fight them. And I thought, okay, so we're going to Iraq to fight Al-Qaeda. Okay, that makes sense. No, we're going to Afghanistan to fight Al-Qaeda. Well, why are we in Iraq? President Bush? WMDs. WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. Humanitarian. Okay, so there are bad people doing bad things. Yes. Okay, well, I guess that's a good reason. It wasn't until later that I discovered that Iraq tried to leave the petrodollar and sell oil and just oil and gas and whatever in euros. And once the invasion of Iraq had occurred and the Iraqis had become relatively put in line by the coalition, they switched back from the euro to the petrodollar, no doubt by the US government. I'm not going to do your research for you, so if you want to find it, look it up. So, after that, I decided that I'm going to go with a famous quote. Follow the money. Follow the money. Do I think that our governments are above killing our citizens and above doing atrocious things simply for monetary gain? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. By no means are we. Or no, by no means do I. I mean, when you think about all of the wars that have been fought, besides maybe World War I and II, it's all been about land and money. Power, basically. And everyone sits there saying, oh, our government wouldn't do that, our government wouldn't do that. The German government killed 6 million Jews, and Stalin and the Russians killed millions of people, of their own citizens. Is it really such a concept that our government wouldn't do the same? And that's one of the things I thought to myself back when I was a senior in high school. All these things started to click into my head. I didn't really think anything of them. I decided to ponder them because I didn't fully understand it. I was barely scratching the surface. It wasn't until after I discovered what the economy really was, a constant input and export, I think would be the inverted phrase, of money. The money has to circulate on a constant basis to produce a healthy economy. If it's stagnant, then it's not going to be good, unless you have capital gains and investments. Because what I'm describing currently would be considered Keynesian economics. For a while, I thought Keynesian economics, the constant forced flow of money, was the way to get a good economy. Not the case. It's what the people decide to do with it that makes it run the best. People are going to know how to spend their money and how the world works better than a body of people telling everyone else what to do. People are going to know what they need. People are going to know what they want to buy, how to make it, how to sell it, how to advertise it a lot more than the government will. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track. So once I discovered what the economy actually was, I discovered what the housing bubble burst actually meant for our economy. I learned about what the Federal Reserve was after I looked up Ron Paul a few months later. I found out that every FRN in circulation must be paid back along with interest. And if all you have out in circulation are FRNs, Federal Reserve notes, eventually you're going to have to put them all back in the bank. So where's that interest going to come from if all of our money is loaned and debt? It's impossible to pay it all back. So that was a long time ago, I discovered that. But then I noticed that my teachers were shoving college down my throat. And after I spoke with my parents and consulted a few politically and economically inept individuals, everyone said that they were going to flock to college as it was the last safe haven to ensure a good job. Now, when you think about supply and demand, the concept of supply and demand, if there's going to be a spike in college graduates and college attendees, their demand is going to shrivel while their supply is going to be ever expanding. So I thought to myself, I could go to college, I could try and guess a good degree that would be well in demand, Or I could go straight into the work, make a name for myself, get some experience in, and make money right away without putting myself thousands of dollars into debt. Because that was one of the things I asked my parents about when considering college. How much would it cost? We looked it up, and after seeing $30,000, I said, nope, nope. Turns out I made the right decision. I'm seeing people with thousands and thousands of dollars of debt and hardly a job that can support it. It's laughable, really. But all of this came about when I stopped and thought, how does the world work? What makes this world work? What is making this system come crumbling down around us? What will make it come crumbling down around us? I figured it out. I didn't figure it out right then. I didn't figure it out right there. But I dwelled on it. I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. All this information, what freedom is, what I consider one of the greatest questions I ever asked. Yeah, and criticize me for my narcissism on this. Why is life? Why is life? Determining what really a Republican is, what really a Democrat is, what really is a liberal, conservative, all that great things. Looking back at history, how National Socialism or communism, how those things have failed us, how to make them actually work. All of these things I've thought about over the past 4 to 5 years of my life. I think I've come up with a lot of answers, but I by no means think myself such an intellect and wise man that I have all the answers. I'm not that arrogant. But people don't have an excuse. All people would have had to do is ask the question, why does the world work the way it does? Why does money get us things? Why does school exist the way it does? Why does everyone have to sit down at a desk and look at a chalkboard or a dry erase board and remember what those people say? Why do we have to take notes and just consider intelligence repeating what they tell us to? Why do we have to follow laws that don't hurt anybody? Why do we have to pay taxes for things that we couldn't care less about, and much less don't want to have happen? Why are we at war with the Middle East? Why do we, fund opposing factions? Two opposing factions. What is the real reason this world works the way it does? And the famous thing I mentioned before, follow the money. Now everyone gets caught up in the lobbyists giving money to politicians, therefore the politicians do what they want them to. And that's pretty much where they stop thinking about it. I have a tendency to think beyond that. Well, don't these lobbyists see what they're doing? Don't they see that they're running this country into the ground? What possible reason would they have to literally throw one of their biggest investments down the toilet? I couldn't find an answer. And, things like the NWO popped up, 2012, Mayan calendar stuff. And all I can keep thinking about is why? And some people are going to say I'm overanalyzing it. Some people are just going to say some people like to watch the world burn, etc., etc. Unless all the sociopaths are in higher corporate dwellings or higher corporate office, would that be? They're CEOs and whatnot. I can't see any of them truly just wanting to see this world burn. But I think it's time I got to the real thing. I think it's time to explain the whole reason you sat through about 20 minutes of this video. There is no excuse. There is no excuse for not asking questions about why the world works the way it does. When we're children, we ask the stupidest questions, but they're incredible at the time. There is no excuse to think within that little box that you consider your life. Once I learned about the economy, I wanted to see how that would affect my life, how that would affect my existence. Because it sounds to me like back then I thought to myself, this economy thing, it sounded like if it goes downhill, my life could become very complicated. And so I looked up what would happen if the economy were to collapse. Needless to say, I didn't like what I found. But one thing you also have to understand is I hate humanity. I'm a misanthrope. I don't hate humanity simply for being human. I hate humanity because it's idiotic. I thought this from when I was about 12 years old, and I hated humanity back then because people seemed way too stupid for their own good. I'd see people do the stupidest things, jump off buildings, teachers who would help kids cheat, kids who couldn't tell me where their own state was on a map. Was everyone this stupid? I mean, I was in a classroom and I was the only one who could actually point to where Colorado was on a map of the mainland of America. I don't know if most of them were just disinterested or if most of them just didn't know. All I knew was, wow, if I was the quiet kid in school, if they had to have me talk, it was bad. That there is no excuse for not asking why the world works the way it does. There is no excuse for trying to shove off responsibility of your life onto a congressman, a president, a czar, a senator, a mayor, a governor. There's no excuse. There is no excuse. And the reason I say that is because when the collapse does come, when it does come, you're going to have no one to blame. You're going to be alone, other than the other people around you looking for food because the trucks aren't going to run and the farmers aren't going to farm. You have no one to blame but yourself. I won't feel sorry for you. You should have prepared. You can't keep shrugging off responsibility onto another person simply because that's the way they told you it works. What happens if that person isn't there to accept the responsibility? History has shown that when a country seems to go bad, going downhill, the government tries to keep that nation in check. And it does some pretty dramatic things to make sure it does. This country used to be prosperous. It used to be the greatest, even though it was one of the youngest. And I know I'm about to hear, well, you had slaves, you had to kill off Indians, yada yada yada. Spare me, okay? I didn't kill Indians, I didn't have slaves. Bah. I'm going to just leave this in there so that people can see that I'm not perfect and I make mistakes. Yes, we did have those things. Meh. Shit happens. What can I say? I don't mind. I can't say I blame the Vikings for plundering and killing. Same with the pirates. It'd be rather hypocritical for me to say that I blame early America for having slaves. The world had slaves. Okay, so spare me. So, what happened? What's the way to fix it? Well, you have to be willing to take responsibility for yourself, your life, your family, what becomes of you. After what becomes of you, what will become of the country. You come first. Because if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of the country? All in all, there is no excuse for closing your eyes to the world around you. There's no excuse not to look at the things in our world that control our lives. The economy, it does. It controls every aspect of what you can and cannot do. Now, I know some people are going to jump on my back about technicalities and whatnot, but if prices go up for food, you're going to spend more on food. That's part of the economy. Therefore, you can't spend money on more frivolous things, or if you're poor, other necessities. The economy, as fragile as it is right now, and the fact it's going to die, or collapse, whatever, all these facts are going to affect every single solitary one of you. One of the bigger things I ask myself is if something dies, or something bad happens to something in my life, or to anything, will it affect me? If the economy collapses, if a whole bunch of cattle die that are used for meat, I don't get my meat, or the meat doesn't ship. Prices for meat skyrocket. What does that mean for me? It means that I'm going to have to pay more. If something bad happens to the economy, or in my town, the fire we had here not too long ago, how would that affect me? All of these scenarios just keep playing in my head. They don't stop. Mainly because half of me doesn't want them to stop. I want to know. I want to know what will happen. And so should you. Because if you'd rather turn a blind eye to these kind of things, you'll be stuck in nature when it comes. Will you be able to survive in nature? Will you be able to survive without stores having food, without your car working, without government there to protect you from one another, and all the paranoia that our country has endured? Will you be able to survive if the government dies? I thought about that. Would I be able to survive if the government died right now? And to be honest, I don't think I would. Not in the slightest. I mean, there's a small part of me that thinks I could. That thinks I could live out in the woods long enough that my bug-out bag would be enough for me to survive to get that nature mentality. It has something to do with being out in the wilderness for 3 days and suddenly you become one with nature, something like that. I always thought it was a myth. I'm praying to God it's not, because I could really use that. But honestly, I give myself about 20%, a 20% survival rating, if that. And that includes having my recurve bow, about the 12 arrows that I have, my entire bug-out bag. I only have 20% chance of survival. How do you think you would fare if the stores ran cold and there was no transportation? I'm Daxon, everybody. Have a good day.